the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. I watch YouTube for fun sometimes, and recently I stumbled on a video that's part of a series called Tasting History with Max Miller. And in one video he did tiger nut cakes, which comes from, it's not really a recipe, but it's a series of illustrations and captions on the walls of the tomb of Vizier Rekhmira. And by the way, if you happen to watch that video, the way Max Miller pronounces the vizier's name would be correct if he were French, but he's not. He's Egyptian. And so that means the E at the end is not silent, and it may not even be an E. But phonetics is not what we're talking about this month. We're talking about food. So let's try to make our own version of tiger nut cakes. First of all, what the heck are tiger nuts? They have nothing to do with furries or cereal mascots. They are actually the tubers, aka roots, of a sedge that is related to both papyrus and a common garden weed. The more you know. And like another ancient Egyptian staple, moringa oil, chufa, or tiger nuts, are now considered a superfood, something for paleo diets and things like that. Old really does become new. Now, in Max Miller's video, he grinds his own tiger nut flour. I don't have time for that. Nor do I have time to reduce my own date syrup either. So I just ordered the flour online. And I bought the date syrup from a local Middle Eastern grocery. Support your local businesses. You can also use carob syrup as a natural sweetener. That would be quite authentic. In fact, the Egyptian word for sweet, najim, was spelled with a picture of a carob pod. Now here's where I have to point out some small but crucial details that our pal Max left out. If you really want to be authentic with any kind of historical recipe, you have to cook over a fire. Because think about it, before the advent of electric ovens, every meal that was cooked over a fire using wood or other fuels. Now, Max Miller interpreted this scene to be bakers shaping cakes the length of their arm. But I have a couple of unfair advantages over Max Miller. For one, the recipe he talks about is in this book, An Ancient Egyptian Herbal by Lisa Maniquet, and in this National Geographic article, a group of archaeologists actually try to recreate another Egyptian bread recipe. And this is the January 1995 issue of National Geographic. Egypt's Old Kingdom is the name of the article. The mini section here is Rediscovering Egypt's Bread Baking Technology. You see, in this article, the Egyptologists working in Saqqara commissioned a potter in modern-day Cairo to make terracotta bread molds that they then used to bake bread over hot coals. I think that's what the bakers making tiger nut cakes were also using, was some kind of a bread mold, because it would make more sense to have a mold the length of your arm, and you would pour the batter into that to make the cake. Because when Max Miller tried to make a large cake, he ended up having something that toppled over, and he had to eat it on a plate with a fork and knife. Now, why is all of this important? Because your utensils and your cooking techniques will affect your recipe. And I figured this out trying Max Miller's version a couple of times. My Patreon folks got to see our first crack at it in the Patreon exclusives last month. But now I'm going to show all of you my modern variation of the recipe that will give you tasty handheld cakes that would be perfect for offering at special occasions like the Feast of Uphead. So let's get cooking. We're going to start off with 1 cup of tiger nut flour, 1 cup of almond flour. Now the trick with this is we don't want it too runny. So we're starting out with 1/4 cup of ghee. Now I'm putting in 1/2 cup of milk. Let's see, in metric this would be about 100 milliliters. Next we're going to add our honey. Now I go by sight on this. I'm thinking this is probably going to be about 3 tablespoons worth of honey. Same thing with the date syrup. Oh, and don't be afraid to season this. This is my special blend that has cinnamon, cardamom, and ginger in it. This is where my recipe deviates from Max Miller's. I'm actually putting an egg in here. The egg will act as a binding agent so that we can shape the cakes. Just enough milk to get it a little more smooth. You want to wet your hands so that the dough doesn't stick to them. Start off making kind of a round ball, and then sort of shape it into a cone. Just like with making cookies, the number of cakes you get will depend on how big you make them. But we're going to put them in the oven now for about 30 minutes. Okay, it's time to pull them out. Here we go. They're perfect handheld size. So now you have something quick and easy to make that can give you a delicious offering and snack or even breakfast for the next day. And it's gluten-free. And if you want to see more of our process, then be sure to check out Patreon, where the exclusive video last month was round 1 of the tiger nut cakes. And remember, we may have used a few products in this video, but we don't have any corporate sponsors. Our sponsor is viewers like you. So how did our cakes turn out, taste-wise? Well, for one, they're very nutty. And because I diluted the recipe using almond flour in addition to the tiger nut flour, because it's easier to find almond flour than it is tiger nut flour. But they both work well together and they give you a very nutty result, which is sweet but not too sweet. You can make it sweeter by coating it with something. Max Miller's recipe used date syrup on the outside of it. We figured out that you can put vanilla candy coating over it and make something really decadent. Our adopted son said, hey, this would be really great with Nutella. But for your viewing pleasure, I guess I'll demonstrate eating one plain. See, there's the inside of it. And yes, it's a little bit dry, so you'll want something to wash it down with. But it is very hearty and filling. And that's something that I think needs to be pointed out when we're exploring ancient recipes versus modern. Modern breads are made with bleached flour that has parts of the grain separated out. It's not whole wheat anymore. And it doesn't feel as filling. Something like this doesn't even have wheat in it. But it is more filling and more substantial, and frankly, I think it's a great thing for breakfast. So there you have it, an Egyptian pagan recipe. So if you like this video, be sure to tell us on YouTube, subscribe if you haven't already, check us out on Patreon and become one of our Patreon peeps, and as always, it's time for our happy dance for all our super stickers. Thank you, thank you. Keep those super stickers coming, because remember, we don't have corporate sponsors, we have you. Check us out on Friday evenings, 8:30 to 8:45 Central US time for our live streams that we do, and be sure to join us next month for another episode of the Kemetic How-To Guide. So in the meantime, this is Sharon, wishing you Senecti. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.